What if Prince Harry and Meghan Markle didn't simply decide to come home, but waited until the timing suddenly made sense? Because the most intriguing part of their reported return to Britain may not be the house, the royal family, or even the emotional story surrounding it. It may be the calendar. According to the source material, August 2026 falls after 6 complete UK tax years spent abroad. Harry and Meghan left Britain in March 2020, just weeks before the UK tax year ended on April 5. Then came April 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, and finally April 2026. 6 full tax years completed. And only months into the 7th, they reportedly returned. That timing has raised eyebrows because, if deliberate, it could make the calendar one of the most interesting pieces of the entire Sussex story. The public explanation sounds much warmer. Harry and Meghan supposedly wanted to be closer to King Charles III. Their children, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, could potentially develop stronger relationships with their royal relatives. It sounds like a story about family. But then someone started counting. According to the script's claims, Harry had reportedly met his father only 3 times during those 6 years, while Charles had seen his grandchildren just twice. Twice. That immediately raises an uncomfortable question. If family connections were the central reason for returning, why had those relationships remained so limited for so long? And which family, exactly, are we talking about? The explanation becomes even more complicated when the wider royal family is considered. The relationships are clearly not simple, and the children are not suddenly stepping into an already established extended family routine. Then there was the reported July meeting between Harry and Charles. No grand photograph. No dramatic palace announcement. No carefully staged reunion for the cameras. Yet 2 newspapers reportedly published accounts of the meeting within the same hour, both presenting their stories as major exclusives. That raises another question. Was this simply information leaking from a private family conversation, or was the information deliberately being distributed? The Sussexes' complicated history with media coverage only adds another layer. Over the years, their representatives have denied involvement in stories that later became associated with their side. Other disputed claims have also circulated, including controversial accounts surrounding their relationship and wedding. That doesn't prove anything about the current situation. But it explains why some observers are approaching the latest explanations with skepticism. And the contrast with earlier reports is striking. Not long ago, Harry was reportedly enjoying his life in California. He was said to be happier, embracing a different lifestyle, and building a new chapter away from Britain. Britain appeared to be behind him. Now the story has changed. Britain is suddenly home again. And then comes the most explosive allegation in the entire narrative. According to the source material, information was allegedly being held from August 12, 2026, before a claim emerged involving U.S. federal authorities and paperwork Harry had submitted around 2021 concerning his immigration status. The allegation was that investigators believed something material may have been misrepresented. But this point needs to be absolutely clear. That remains an allegation, not established fact. There is no basis here to present it as proven. Still, the claim has attracted attention because of its highly specific timeline, 1 date, several days of silence, and then a dramatic allegation of increasing pressure. If such pressure existed, it could potentially transform the story from a royal family dispute into an international legal and immigration issue. But there's a major contradiction. Another account suggested Harry had been considering a return to Britain for months. A reported friend allegedly knew during the spring that he was looking at properties in the Cotswolds, near Highgrove, the area connected with his childhood. If that account is accurate, then this wasn't simply an emergency escape. Unless both stories contain part of the truth. Perhaps the destination had been considered for months, while the urgency changed much later. Imagine planning a move in advance, watching the calendar and considering the financial implications. Then suddenly facing an entirely different kind of pressure. The destination stays the same. The deadline changes. And then there is the money. One royal broadcaster reportedly described the California experiment in extremely blunt terms, arguing that the commercial success expected from the Sussexes had not fully materialized. The legal battles were expensive. The expected financial windfalls did not arrive as some had anticipated. And the timing becomes particularly interesting if financial consequences were approaching around the same period as the reported homecoming. This is where the return starts looking less like a simple change of address and more like a potential financial and security calculation. For years, Harry fought through the courts over his security arrangements in Britain. His argument was that he needed greater protection when visiting or returning to the country. But two major variables stood in the way. He was no longer living permanently in Britain. And he was no longer a working royal. Change those circumstances, and the equation could look very different. If Harry establishes a permanent life in Britain and eventually takes on some form of official royal responsibility, the question of security could become much more complicated. One patronage. One ceremonial position. One carefully worded announcement. And suddenly, the question of who pays for protection could change dramatically. The source material estimates private security costs at roughly £3 to £4 million per year. That's not a one-time expense. It's an enormous annual financial commitment. But if Harry's circumstances changed enough to qualify him for protection connected to an official role, some of that burden could potentially shift toward the state security system. This is why the language surrounding his status matters. The reported position remains that Harry and Meghan are private individuals and non-working royals. But the possibility of a future role has reportedly not been completely ruled out, with any potential arrangement needing to be discussed directly between Harry and his father. And that creates another fascinating possibility. What if Harry returns, but Meghan does not receive the same status? That would produce a very different royal arrangement. Harry could potentially become involved in official duties again while Meghan remained outside the working structure. The security question could then become separate from the family question. And instead of restoring the Sussexes as a team, the monarchy could potentially be dealing with the gradual rehabilitation of one member of the couple. Then comes another major contradiction. A former head of royal protection reportedly viewed the return as a dramatic U-turn. For years, concerns had been raised about Britain's safety for Harry, Meghan, and their children. Yet now they were reportedly considering making Britain their home again. The contradiction is difficult to ignore. The country once described as dangerous is suddenly being considered suitable for raising Archie and Lilibet. And security professionals would have to take that decision seriously. Britain reportedly monitors more than 1,000 fixated individuals, with a significant number considered genuine risks. A high-profile royal return therefore requires more than choosing a house. Homes must be assessed. Schools may need security planning. Travel routes have to be considered. Emergency procedures need to exist. Threat assessments have to be conducted. A move of this scale cannot realistically be organized overnight. Which makes another claim particularly interesting. The suggestion that King Charles only discovered the return at the last possible moment. If the move involved properties, schools, transportation, and security planning, someone would almost certainly have needed advance information. Somewhere, preparations would have been taking place. And then there is the biggest issue of all. The monarchy itself. King Charles may want a closer relationship with his son. But Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, occupy an entirely different constitutional position. If Harry returned with his father's personal support while remaining deeply estranged from William, the problem would no longer be purely emotional. It could become institutional. The king and the future king cannot easily appear to send completely different messages about the same situation. And then there is Meghan. If she eventually appeared at a formal royal event, protocol could create an extraordinary moment. Imagine Meghan Markle standing in the same room as Prince William and Catherine, the Princess of Wales, after years of interviews, documentaries, accusations, and public disagreements. Every movement would be watched. Every expression would be analyzed. One gesture could become an international headline. One photograph could dominate television coverage for days. And the media would undoubtedly dissect every second of it. But beneath all the spectacle is a much larger calculation. The tax clock has moved forward. The financial pressure may be increasing. The security dispute remains unresolved. The immigration allegation adds another layer of uncertainty. And a British address potentially connects several of these issues at once. That's why August 2026 could represent something far more complicated than an emotional homecoming. Maybe the timing is nothing more than coincidence. Maybe the financial theories are overstated. Maybe the legal allegation eventually goes nowhere. Or maybe the return has been carefully considered for months, with several different pressures eventually pointing toward the same destination. Because the most uncomfortable possibility may also be the simplest. Harry and Meghan waited until returning to Britain finally made sense. Financially, strategically, and perhaps, in some respects, personally. Now the world is waiting for the first major photograph of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle back on British soil. And when that photograph finally appears, everyone will be looking at one thing: their faces.